Thank you for joining us on this very sunny, hot day in the UK or Southeast London, anyway, or England. Hope you're enjoying it so far and enjoying the hot weather that our summers probably come. Well, until Saturday, anyway. So, yeah, what are you guys having for lunch? And that'll be great. And while I wait for your comments about your lunch, we've got Kirsten Greggs today to talk about DEI and more information. So, she'll tell us a bit more about the talk today. Let's see what people are having. Oh, yeah, of course, you're having coffee. That makes sense. I'm having well, for now at least, just a orange drink.
Okay. So what
Ooh.
what are jammy Dodgers?
So they are little round biscuits with jelly in the middle.
Oh, okay.
And the Jammy Dodgers have like a heart-shaped thing, I think, in the middle that you can see.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and that's having a nice hot salad. Audra is having breakfast as well, and Debbie, I guess, is going to have apples, but I'm sure she'll tell us. Anyway, Kirsten, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and give some background for those people who don't know who you are?
All right. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are tuned in. I'm Kirsten Greggs, the founder and CEO of Trap Recruiter LLC. I work as a talent acquisition consultant and career coach, and my goal is to bridge the gap between job seekers who are from diverse and marginalized backgrounds with the employers who are interested in hiring them. Oh, uh-oh. Okay. Oh, wow.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, give me a second. I'm just going to apologise for the dip in the show there. I'm going to switch off some other things so we don't have too much echo going on. I'm going to see if we can retrieve our guest and perhaps retrieve Shafiq as well. Please let me know if you can see me in the chat bar. Hi, everyone. Hi, Debbie. I'm going to see if I can fetch Kirsten Griggs, invite on screen. Bear with me, please. I should really turn off the Nora logo on screen. We're not here for the Noras. Let's just do that. Kirsten, good afternoon. How are you? My apologies for the interruption there. It seems that Shafiq's broadband has gotten the worst of them. Can I just check that your microphone is working okay?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm going to put my headphones in case you're getting any kind of echo. Give me a second. I was just watching, so not entirely ready to join in. And in fact,
no
I'm going to have to ask you, what was the topic for the discussion today?
Diversity and inclusion.
So it is an area that everyone has been, well, I say everyone has been talking about. Some people have been avoiding talking about the subject because they're maybe in a place where they've not either fully made up their mind, or they're resisting changing their mind on certain topics, or maybe they don't feel that they're the people who should be loud on the subject. Can I ask as a first question, should everyone be as vocal as everyone else, or should it be left to the people who are bearing the brunt of lack of diversity in the workplace?
Well, that's an excellent question. And from a recruitment standpoint, I do think that every person who is involved in recruitment and hiring should have an idea and should have a commitment to diversity, recruiting, inclusion, equity, belonging, balance, whatever other letters and words you want to put at the end of it. I do think that every person who is involved in recruitment should be involved. But I also think that it starts with leadership at the top of organizations to be able to not only define what their goals are and how they want to align their diversity strategies and initiatives, but be able to speak to them and then push that stuff down. And it will make it easier for your senior leaders, for your middle managers, and then for people who maybe aren't, don't have a stake in hiring, or who don't engage with other people outside of their teams, to have a better understanding and understanding of why it is important that we embed diversity and inclusion into our corporate cultures.
Yeah. I get the impression often that there can be a culture of let's just not talk about it, and we'll all get along just fine. But when an organization I can't think of a better phrase for it, but gives permission for the topic to be aired, then people come to the fore. People who want to talk about it, people who have, as I mentioned before, have been on the wrong side of diversity, or people who just want to know more, who want to educate themselves. But until that point, the culture was, well, we don't get into that sort of thing. We just trust everyone to be as nice as they can be. But that's not good enough these days.
Well, it really isn't. And I think some of it is that everyone tries to handle it in-house. But I think that when you don't have that expertise, when you don't have that subject matter expertise, that you do need to go to have someone outside who can come in as as an interested third party, but that doesn't have a stake in it, emotionally. And we talk a great deal about emotional intelligence. And I think we use that to equate facts over feelings, to say, oh, well, this is the way that you feel. It's not actually true. But a lot of times when it comes to how people are treated in the workplace and how they're engaging in the workplace, your facts and your feelings are the same thing. It's about intention over impact. Intention over impact has been the operate, the way people have operated. And I was even guilty of this. I like to put, I like acronyms. So, I would be like intentional inclusion. And it's not about the intent. It's really about the impact, because I can be, on my way to the store, for example, and I'm, taking this and making it a little bit more general, but I could be on my way to the store to grab some, some items to, pass out to folks who don't have something. And then, I get in my rush, I run into someone, or hit them with my cart. And I'm like, well, it's fine because I'm here to do a good thing. So you'll be fine. The impact is that I hurt someone in trying to do something that I had a good intention on. So I think we need to put impact over intention. And my good friend, Sarah Morgan, was one of the first persons who really brought that to my mind. I was like, she's right. Because again, I was stuck on, it's intentional. You have to be intentional about being inclusive in the workplace. And I'm like, no, you have to think about what the impact of your actions are before you can even start to execute those things.
Yeah. I was having a discussion with someone yesterday, and I was talking about being aware of your own personal biases and leanings and preferences. So if you were a hiring manager, it may be that retrospectively you might notice, or it might be pointed out to you, that the people that you've hired over the past year have been predominantly men or women, or from a particular demographic group, and you hadn't realized until it was pointed out there was a pattern there.
Yes.
Awareness is something that I think people should always try and do as much as possible, because we talk about hidden bias where you don't realize that you're doing it, but when you do, it surprises you, or you can learn and do something about it. Now, my point is that if you're aware that so I often say in talks, if I'm giving talks to HR people, I would never hire someone with a goatee beard. Goatee beards are the work of the devil, and I would never. Well, the devil has a goatee beard, so yeah.
I didn't know.
But I'm saying it jokingly. So there could be a silly reason for having a bias. I also say I would never hire someone called Susan, because when I was at school, there was a girl called Susan, and she really wasn't very nice. So if I ever interviewed someone called Susan who had a goatee beard, they're not getting the job. My point is that if I'm aware that I have those biases, those predilections, if you like, to not hire someone like that, I would also be aware that to not hire someone who was the best person for the job, even if it was Susan with a goatee beard, would be a stupid thing to do, because it makes no sense. But if I'm aware of the biases that I have, then I can counteract that. I can set that aside. So organizations are the same. If they do nothing about it, if they're not aware of their culture, if they're not aware of what they might be doing just reactively or with no real planning to it, then they can easily find that they're discriminating inadvertently. And being aware of your culture means that you're in a position to do something about it. Do you speak with organizations who come to that realization?
I try to get them sometimes to that realization, and obviously some pushback. Folks get very defensive, especially when it comes to their businesses, and I'm aware of that, and I try to point out blind spots. But I'm also in a unique position because I myself am a marginalized person. I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm older. I might present as a millennial, but I'm not. So, there's some things there too. So, I get it from both ends. I get it from the younger folks who are like, oh, you're an old lady. And then I get it from the older people who are like, you're too young, you don't know what you're talking about. When it's just, until I reveal, who I am and what my age is, or they hear me speak. And I get all these weird, well, like, I wasn't expecting that from you, the girl in the graphic t-shirt, with the ponytail. I didn't know that she was going to actually be able to put a coherent sentence together. But it's a matter of recognizing what your blind spots are and then being willing to unpack them. Because honestly, a lot of people, we call them unconscious biases, but we are really aware. Like you just gave a story, like, why the name Susan triggers you. You know why the goatee kind of makes you look at folks differently. And it's that confirmation bias that we have. Like we come in with our ideas. We come in with what we think about it. Yeah. So we're saying we're gonna give Susan a chance, Susan with the goatee a chance anyway. We're going to interview her anyway, or he or him or they anyway, just because, you know, we said, because we don't want to be biased, you know, but that whole time we're sitting there waiting for cues to confirm why Susan with the goatee is not the right candidate. So we really have to like go beyond just having the awareness of what our biases are and the awareness of where we, you know, are causing folks to be excluded and not have access. We have to really, you know, unpack and break down the reasons why those statements became true for us, or those feelings became true for us in the first place.
Can I backtrack a little? I know that when Shafiq was on, you were just in the process of giving us a little bit of your background, and I'd like the audience to be more aware of your background, your history, so that they can see where you're coming from. So I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, so I started recruiting in 2000 at the very first day of 2000 that I could work. And I was in this new job called technical recruiting, had no idea what it was. You know, we were expecting that the world was going to end, and it didn't. So that meant jobs, and that meant more people needed to be hired. So I was hired at the height of the tech tech boom, and did not even know what technical recruiting was. I worked for a third-party recruiter. Very early on, about 10 months in, one of our clients who did not have an internal recruiting department, their HR actually did recruiting. They said, oh, there's this new job, you know, we want to have it in our organization. So they brought 3 of us over from this agency and, you know, hired us as in-house recruiters. And, you know, I was a corporate recruiter up until 2016, 17, when I got laid off from a large defense contractor. And, you know, I did other work. I did contract work, you know, in that time. And during the course of like interviewing and all these things, you know, me having had, you know, thankfully, you know, being blessed with employment, you know, for all of those years, you know, I was one that was always pushing back on the stereotypes about recruiters, because I was a recruiter, you know, and not only that, I had the last 5 years of my career, I was an operations leader. So I was really doing training, you know, I was working with more managers. I wasn't doing, you know, as much full life cycle recruiting. That wasn't my main job. So, you know, I'm pushing back on, you know, all of these negative stereotypes and like, no, that's not really how recruiters are. But again, I had blind spots because I was, you know, insulated. And when I started having to deal with recruiters who I didn't have any influence over and who did not have any, you know, influence with me, there was like, I was like, wow, people were right. Like, we're horrible. Like, we're not good people. And yeah, we can be. And at the time, like I was blogging with a multi-contributor blog, and I would be saying things. And, you know, I because I was in corporate prior to that, you know, I was doing things kind of on the, you know, not sneakily, but like I didn't want to represent my organization. So I was doing these things called recruiter problems, memes, which were really just my way of like expressing the stuff that was irritating me that week or that day or whatever. And, you know, like all of that stuff started to grow. And as I was, you know, again, as I was interviewing, looking for jobs and doing all those small projects that I had been doing all the time, like going to speak to interns, going to speak to veterans, you know, helping folks that were in between jobs and who were needing outplacement services, like doing that kind of stuff. So that was the career coaching side. Or, you know, an old coworker will call me and say, hey, remember that report that you built? Can you come and do that for us? Or, hey, can you come train our managers how to interview or how to write job descriptions and all these things? So, you know, someone asked me like, well, why don't you just have your own company? And again, my mind was like, Well, I don't want to, because I'm thinking, I'm a recruiter. So I'm like, I don't want a recruiting company. Like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, no. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, you can do these things. You're already doing them. So I did. I started my own company, and, here I am.
So in your 20 years of recruitment, you will have gone through what every recruiter does go through is an evolution of understanding what recruitment's about and where you fit into it. It's all too common, whether you're with a recruitment agency or in-house, that you're part of a machine. And you're part of the machine. You understand the boundaries. You know what your job is. You know what your targets are. You know who you're working for, and you know who you're working with. And you are interacting with candidates and hiring managers on a day in, day out basis. And recruiters typically find the quickest way from point A to point B, and that might mean sometimes crossing some lines or doing things the fastest way, but not the most ethical way. In your evolution as a recruiter in thinking about diversity, how would you have come to the realization that actually you have a part to play in the diversity of the employers that you're working with?
I don't think that one's a fair question for me, given the body that I'm in, because it wasn't ever even a consideration for me. It wasn't something that I set out for. It really was just in me to want. I mean, we all, that's another bias, the like me bias or similarity bias. We want to be around people who share our experiences. We want to be around people who look like us, especially when we're new to an organization. There's a book written called Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together at Lunch? And it's not to say, oh, like we hate every other person. It's not that. It's that when you walk into a room, like you clearly navigate to someone. Like when I walk into a room and I've been in this situation where it's mostly all men, again, I worked in defense contracting, but I also worked on the intel and, defense programs that were heavily male, especially in cybersecurity. And, I walk into a room, and if there was a woman there, I'm probably going to go sit next to her. I'm probably going to gravitate towards her. If there was at the time, if there was a younger person there, I'm probably going to gravitate to the younger person. If there was someone who maybe looked like or felt like, they had some type of, marginalized identity, I might gravitate towards them just to try and get a baseline of understanding. And is that wrong? Probably. But again, it's a matter of starting from I'm already in an uncomfortable position. So I've got to get somewhere where I'm comfortable and then move on. So again, that wasn't always, it wasn't even a consideration for me. I've always wanted to be inclusive. What I had to learn how to do is not only be inclusive, but make people feel like they belong. And you can't force belonging. You can't force people to, I don't go by the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated. I don't believe in that. I believe in the platinum rule, treat people the way that they want to be treated. Because especially recruiters, everybody doesn't want to go out and drink after work. Everybody doesn't want to listen to your music up loud because you're about to go to this concert. Everybody doesn't want to go to, like, I was with a group of folks who were all my age, at one point. It was about 20 of us. And again, we were a large organization. We were young, and at that point, we were making a good amount of money. We were in the, higher percentile of money, education. We were young, we were attractive. And again, I mean, like, these are just things that are true, so we hung out, and it's offensive to other people, to be quite honest, the way that we were so, for lack of a better word, aggressive in wanting everyone to behave the way that we did, wanting everyone to be a go-getter, wanting everyone to be on.
Assertive's a better word.
Like, you don't go home. Like, you work, we eat lunch together, we hang out, and at lunch we're talking about what we're about to go back and do. We get back to work. There was a time over a few months, and I've talked about this a few times. There was a time over like a year where I went out every night. And not only did I go out every night, but I went back to work after. Like, after we had partied, you know, because we worked seemed like 24/7, and that's not the work-life balance that everyone wants. That's not the work-life balance that everyone needs, and it's not the one that we should have been projecting on everyone, because that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that, you know, the at that time, you know, 40-plus-year-old mother who's got responsibilities shouldn't be on our team, or shouldn't feel like she can be a part of us because we want to do other things. So like I said, I evolved in the belonging sense. I evolved definitely in the balance sense. I didn't know what it was then, but because we didn't name it that, but I definitely have evolved even myself in how I approach people, job seekers, co-workers, managers, you know, really trying to get an understanding for where they are, meet them there, and then see how we can grow together.
So going back to that room that you'd be going into, and you'd be looking for someone that you had something in common with. Everyone wants to feel like they belong, as you were saying.
Yes.
Everyone wants to feel welcomed when they're in a new place. And if you go into a room and you're looking for someone that you can sit alongside, it's that you don't want. There's a fear of standing on your own, of being the only person who is in that corner at that table, and inevitably you're thinking, well, what's everyone else talking about? I'm not part of the conversation. And when you're welcomed into a room, even to part of it by someone who's been there for longer than you, then they'll tell you the inside story on, you know, this person, that hiring manager, this recruiter. You find out about the company. Whereas when you're frozen out, if you were sitting on your own in that room, you wouldn't learn about the company, and you couldn't learn to be part of that organization. You wouldn't feel like you belonged. So when you're talking about treating people they want to be treated, if you saw someone else coming into the room, would you be the person to go up and welcome them and come and sit with me, and fill them in on, right, what's this company about? Ask about them, ask how they came to the organization, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And again, I'm in a unique position because as a recruiter, I'm the person that likely brought that person into the organization. So they're already relying on us. You know, recruiters are the ones that the employees are frequently touching back to, like, how do I log in to get my benefits? How do I do this? Where do I eat? You know, what time do people usually get? Like, they're asking us those questions, you know, at some point, and even the ones that come up after they've onboarded. So, you know, I'm in a unique position where that was always, again, a part of my job. I never stopped recruiting. It's always going. And so I would be the person that would reach back to folks, but I also made it known that my experience with someone is not necessarily going to be yours. Now, I would be transparent and authentic in what it is, but I would frame it in a way that says, you know, like, me and this person don't get along. We have issues. But you know, we have a respect for one another, and here is how we manage our relationship. That doesn't mean that you and that person are going to have the same experience. So all I can give you is what I know. I'm not going to tell you, oh, I hate, you know, it's not like we're best friends. You know, if I don't like someone, my best friend's not allowed to be friends with them. That's just a rule. But that's not the same with coworkers. That's not the same with everyone else.
Yeah, one of the things that I find that's often overlooked when you're talking about co-workers who have differences is that, first of all, not only is everyone entitled to be treated well and respected and accepted into a workplace, it's also entirely possible that they can, for legitimate or sometimes indefinable reasons, they can not get on with someone, or someone might not get on with them. Everyone has the right to choose who they like or not like, and if there's a culture where, you know, a group of people are sidelined, then you could say, well, that's the reason they're being sidelined, or it might just be that they just don't get on. And that awareness that I was talking about at the beginning, where you're aware that everyone else has their own perspective on the place that they work, their own perspective on the person that hired them, the person they're working for, the people they're working alongside, and they have a whole life going on outside of work that their colleagues should be in a position to appreciate on a day-to-day basis, but often forget about, and people can be treated badly because people aren't taking that into account. They're not appreciating the fuller person.
So did you see the question here?
Oh, Debbie asked, what do you say to the recruiters that said, I'd love to hire diversity candidates, but they never apply? It's a good question.
So yes, I think the next comment is that that's a lazy recruiter, and I agree.
Yeah.
Why aren't you sourcing? Why aren't you going out looking for candidates? Everyone is not going to apply. Attraction, like it doesn't stop at attraction. Everyone doesn't know about your organization. Everyone doesn't. Your job posting may not be appealing to diverse candidates. Your website may not be. Your products and services may turn folks off. So you have to go out and actually look for certain folks if you want to change the landscape. Now that is a good point. If only homogenous folks are applying for your jobs, you might need to look at that. That's a place that you can audit and say, why aren't diversity candidates applying?
Yeah. So it's a really good point. When you keep doing what you always did, then you'll get the results that you always did. If you're looking to have a more diverse workforce, then you can't simply wait for people to apply, because all you're going to get are people who already can picture themselves in roles in your organization because they see people like them. But if you want a wider pool of candidates that will include people who are better for each individual job, and you want to have a richer seam of people applying, then you have to do something proactively to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of frontline recruiters, do you get involved in training recruiters on how they can address these issues themselves, in the mechanics of recruiting, posting vacancies to wherever they're advertising, as well as on their own website, in putting the language on their own corporate website to be more open and inviting, and ways in which they can share the culture more openly so that people can relate to the wider group of people that you have in the company already? Is that part of the training that you get involved in?
Excuse me. Absolutely. I do sourcing training. When you said mechanics, but I come from a background, this may be my old crotchety self, but I don't believe that you can teach. A friend of mine taught me this phrase called that says, you can't teach height. It's like a basketball player. You can't teach height. So, and you'll hear recruiters who say, if you ask any number of recruiters, how'd you become a recruiter? They're like, I just kind of happened, and I think that that's the truth. We just kind of are. There's a certain personality, there's a certain drive, there's a certain je ne sais quoi, so to speak, of what a recruiter is. So I can't teach that. Yes, I can teach you how to. I can teach you how to put words, how to string together Boolean search strings. I can even, say, here's how you X-ray search. I can give you a script that says, here's the questions that you run through when you're doing a pre-screen. But to me, that's more so, something that you get used to. And again, I came from a time when my account manager or my manager would be, when I first started, would be on the phone listening to me, and putting up a, tapping, not doing that. So, there's that. I don't do that. And even when I would be responsible, even when I was responsible for training our new recruiters, like people that were just starting, I would have them sit and watch me, how I do it. But I would tell them, that doesn't mean that I want you to develop your own style. I want you to develop your own thing. So there's the mechanics of, yes, you must, check who applied, go into the ATS, the disposition, disposition your candidates. In my world, you had to, because compliance was a big deal. You pick up the phone, email, now Slack, text, whatever, however you contact folks, post your jobs, take them down, make your offers. I can show you the process. I can show you the steps, but it's up to
Yeah.
you to kind of put your own self into it. And I do think the best
Yeah.
recruiters have their own unique individual style.
But if an organization wants to be more inclusive, then that begins before anyone speaks to any recruiter. It happens before because when someone has a preconception or a perception of an organization, then they can easily think that's not the company for me, or yes, that is the company for me. And if they're not applying in the first place, if they're not attracted in the first place, then you don't get to know that they were on the verge of applying, but they didn't. You just never hear from them. They walk away in silence. You don't get to address the problem. So how do you be more inclusive before candidates apply? How do you make sure that wider pool of candidates is coming to you either by application or by you going and finding them?
Couple of ways, and this might rub some folks the wrong way, but in 2020 and probably still in 2021, I was still having people who would say to me, "You're the first Black recruiter I've ever seen."
Really?
So, oh yeah.
Wow.
Because I mean, there's not a lot of recruiters who have this longevity. Number one, I mean, a lot of folks use recruiting as a gateway drug to other parts of HR or to do something else, or they don't like it, like they do it for a certain time and it's not for everyone. So some folks may move on, or, some folks move into management, or again, do what I did and move into operations. So they're not actually client or job seeker facing as much. So, number one, I think you need to hire recruiters that represent the pool of candidates that you want to attract. And it's not unreasonable to say that, especially, again, coming from larger organizations. When we went to find veterans, we would have a veteran recruiter, someone who had been in the military, who can speak the language, who understands the culture that they are coming out of and how and what that transition is going to be like into corporate America. And the same goes for someone like me. I've had a different experience than some others because both of my parents were worked in corporate, white collar jobs. My mother was a CFO. So I went to work with my mother, from an early stage. I knew what office politics looked like. My dad was a salesperson, and that's probably where I got, my sales recruiting drive. He was always on the go, always in the car, but he still interacted with people. He's a relationship builder that he probably doesn't even know how great he is at it. My father can remember names and events from, like, no one else knows the stuff that he knows. It's just like he gets to know people at a level that I think a lot of folks don't. He builds relationships in a certain way. So, I had that experience coming up, but there are a lot of people who are going to be first generation, coming even today, working in an office, and they don't know how to manage and how to navigate that in a way that's going to keep them out of harm's way. So I do think that you have to have a recruiting staff first and foremost that at least has some diversity in and of itself, and that's very important, especially in the technical field, because what are we getting? You go to technical recruiters, or even where, in this area, I'm in Northern Virginia outside of DC. So most of the tech recruiters were, 20 to 30 something year old white guys, who were former, they had all gone to college. They all had a certain style about them. And, so, and here comes me.
I wouldn't want to sound patronizing, but are you saying that a white person would find it much more difficult to recruit a diverse workforce?
No, I'm saying that if all of you're asking me ways that we can, diversify our workplace. And I'm saying, well, number one, I think you should start with your recruiting department is a good place to start, because if your recruiting department is all the same, then you can't wonder why they're going to certain places to recruit. It's not necessarily top of mind for them. Or again, they're only doing diversity efforts during these seasons, and I think we got into especially I can speak from my experience in corporate, we got into this thing where even college students were considered diversity hires, entry level, like that was how we got our diversity numbers up. And we did it, male versus female. But when you start to look at the numbers of who was, racially or ethnically diverse, it was, one.
Yeah. So, when looking at hiring more diverse candidates, when you're looking at the design of a job, the design of a job and the design of the criteria for hiring someone for that role, we need someone who can do this, and learn to do that. It's often the case that there are criteria that have been bolted on that were never necessary in the first place. It might be, we need you to have a degree from these universities, or we need you to have X number of years experience. And reports that we've read and experience has shown that often these criteria in themselves generate that same homogenous workforce that you always did hire before, which means that you're not going to move the dial on your diversity.
Right.
So setting aside those criteria, how difficult is it in organizations that you've been part of, and there've been some really big companies, especially maybe defense, where they can be stuck in their ways? How difficult is it to strip away those and say, do we really need to insist on this? Because if we do, that's going to be taking 20% of potential applicants out of the pool straight away.
It is difficult to do that, and I think it needs to be done honestly in smaller groups. And we have what we call here in America, I don't know if they do that in UK, but we have like focus schools, and it's the especially, again, coming from technical, it's the Virginia Techs, it's the certain schools in this area that we're seeing. And then, we need a diversity candidate, like you're still only going to like the top 4 HBCUs, and that's not always the case, because it's more of wanting to build a partnership with people and wanting to, you have to get out of that, we're only doing this. And again, a lot of folks were excluded. We talk a lot about experience, not just even the school you went to, but the experiences that you have, especially with some newer jobs. And I can speak to this from a startup perspective, having worked with, consulted with several of them, and still trying to, in 2021, still trying to get to them to understand why, having a preference for, and when you even say preference, you're in your mind, you're really saying requirement, that they come from, that your next hire come from a startup, because they understand that startup culture. And me trying to explain to them that the folks that you say you want to diversify your workforce, but you're not taking into account that the folks that you're looking for were historically excluded from these positions. So how are you going to do that if you only want folks who come from the same type of companies, or who have already done this for X amount of years? And by the way, that job didn't exist, that many years ago, or there were only 4 people who did it 4 years ago. So, we might want to open this up. So it's an ongoing conversation. And the way that I do that is with data. I show data and say, here's the situation. I talk to some folks. I use a number of AI tools, and on one of them, I'm able to disaggregate on the basis of even like Native American, Black, Hispanic, Latino. Like if a person has identified themselves in that way someplace on the internet, And I showed, okay, you want to increase your Native American, workforce, for example, they're this percent of the population, number one. And, so here's the numbers. And, I took something of all the candidates with just this job title, 20,000, 20,000 people out there with this job title right now. 4 are Native American. Two of them were related. And I'm like, you have to think about this. It's not just, it's access and opportunities. And again, I showed them on the basis of just, here's the job title. So maybe we need to look at other ways to do this.
So finding candidates who have not necessarily the same experience in the same role before, but have transferable skills from other areas, who have the skills that can do the job, but may not have actually done the job before. As a recruiter, I was always of a view that in a competitive market for candidates, if my client, Company X, were looking to hire a design engineer, for example, and they were using my recruitment company and several other recruitment companies, I would know full well that all the recruiters that I was up against would be looking at the obvious candidates who were working for the competitors and so on. And I thought, well, my way to get an advantage there is to find a rough diamond, find someone that everyone else is rejecting. But I know if I dig a little bit deeper and scratch the surface, they would be perfect for the job, because the company would be finding a gem that wouldn't be going off elsewhere. So when you make an offer, there's more likelihood it's going to be accepted. When you have that person join your company, and you might train them into the role as opposed to they can drop into it straight away, then they feel more part of the organization. So I think those principles can apply to diverse hiring as well, where you're looking for someone that everyone else is looking past. You're finding the gems, you're finding the uncut diamonds, someone who can become a fantastic member of your organization, rather than someone who fits the cookie cutter.
I call those badass C's.
Okay.
I did.
I like that. I like that name.
Yeah, I wrote a post about it, about how we overlook those folks. Like, oh, this is what an A player looks like. This is what a B player looks like. But guess what? You got a lot of badass C's out there who will probably give you more than you even asked for.
And cause a lot less grief at the same time.
Yeah. I wrote a post about that too. Warning people about some of the A players. I call them Kanye's. Forgive me, Lord. Do you know who Kanye West is?
I know Kanye West. Yeah.
And he's brilliant, very talented, but very a nightmare. He would be a nightmare HR wise. So I'm like, don't hire Kanye.
There's a talk that I have occasionally given over the years on I call it the crazy to hire matrix. And if you think about the abilities of someone matched to their culture fit, and companies they'll be much more flexible for someone who is an A hire, but those A hires tend to take up a lot of time with HR because their demands are high. There's a good chance they'll be tempted to go off elsewhere, and any number of other things. So they might be seemingly perfect for the job, but actually the people that they had disregarded as not having all the experience that they wanted and skills straight away, but were great culture fits, those were trainable people. Those were people who could be have phenomenal potential within your organization, and those are the candidates that your competitors are not looking closely at, that are not getting the jobs elsewhere, and those badass C's could well be those candidates.
So there's a inclusion, belonging needs to start at the top, and have them believe it's the right thing to do, not just morally, but also to shareholders, as McKinsey report shows, that a diverse workforce in a given industry is more profitable than the one that is less diverse. Yes.
So that's a great point. Actually, one I wanted to come on to, because if you say you've got a company of one, if I started a company tomorrow, the culture of that company would be my personality, and you too. So if you were hiring someone, then that someone has to get along with you and you with them. But as you grow, once you become 10 employees or 100 or 10,000, then the personality of the CEO is less important, or should be less important, that they get on with every person that's hired, and every person who comes to the organization, they have a fractional impact on the culture of the organization. But so the initial culture that was set up when the CEO started the company way back has evolved, and with an HR team that's brought in, it can be much more intentional. You can say, well, we want to have this kind of organization. We aspire to be, a company that's very inclusive, that's very progressive, that takes risks, that has an open hiring policy, where we are very flexible in the people that we bring on, but we're still very demanding in the people who join us and what they do as part of the organization. So looking at companies who are trying to be intentional like that, how can you advise them to start that process?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the leadership first, because I would ask the leadership, take a look at your team, and are you doing that, or are you only requiring it of the people that you hired to do that? Why are, lead by example, number one. And I think that's where, we'll get a lot of people who will say, oh, wow, no, I haven't done that. Or they push back on they put some of the onus on, there's a lot of blame game going. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme of like the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other. And I think that, I think that becomes the situation, or that is the situation with, HR/recruiting and leadership on who's responsible for diversity hiring. And again, I do think that it needs to come from the top, but it also needs to be spread across. And I think someone there said diversity at all levels. And I do like that, because there does have to be a balance. You have a lot of organizations who do say, oh, they have great diversity numbers. I'm using great liberally, meaning that they have they meet their goals percentage wise of the number of folks that they hire, but they're likely positioned or stationed in certain silos. So again, when they're going out to hire their technical folks, again, they're going to the same organizations. They're getting people from the same competitors, from the same schools. They're not looking outside of that box. And when they're looking for accountants, they might want to hire some diversity folks, or when they're looking for executive assistant, or for logistic folks, or contracts, or finance. There's some there's some nuances there at certain levels. So we need to think about diversity on a balanced level as well, and not just the numbers level. Like, why aren't we seeing it in these areas? Why are we only seeing it here? Why is it concentrated?
I've seen some companies described as snow-capped mountains. That the higher up you go, the whiter it is. And also that where you're talking about diversity at all levels, some organizations can have, whether it's divisions within the company or even a strata of management, where you don't see diversity going beyond that point. And I mean, the most obvious thing that you see is we might have across the company, we have a 50-50 or thereabouts ratio male to female, but there are no women on the board. And that stands out like a sore thumb. But and I'm not saying that women are that's a diversity thing, but when you're looking at other groups, people with different backgrounds, and they're not permeating the organization, they're not going through over time. At some point in their career, they either stop where they are, they don't get any further, or the opportunities don't open up for them, or the training isn't available that would help them to get that further step to go further. So when organizations are picking out of their junior managers, who are we going to enroll in MBA programs? It's vital that you make sure that is seeded with a good spread of diverse candidates, not just male and female, but right across the board. I've just noticed that we're coming on for 5 minutes to the hour.
Oh, okay.
We've gone a bit further than would have been expected given the start that we had to the show. Kirsten, I can't let you go before mentioning my eldest son is Keir, and it's the exact same spelling as the beginning of your name.
I love it.
And so I should say Keir is an old Irish Scottish name, which means dark swarthy one.
Dark what?
Dark swarthy one. My son being half Italian, that certainly applies to him. And
my name means, and I'm not sure that my parents knew what my name meant, but I do think that I'm a very spiritual person, so I do think that there's always some. You name your kids what they are. So my mother was reading a book by an author named Dorothy Kirsten, but she spelled it Kier. And then she always wanted me to have a middle name, and my father said no, because he's like, when she gets married, I want her to carry the Greg's name, so he wanted me to be Kirsten Greg something. And my mother, I've always known my middle name was Aaliyah. So when I was 16, that was my gift. They allowed me to put it on my birth certificate. And and then again, I was, starting to understand like what does my name mean? And my name, Kirsten, is actually the girl version of Christian in a lot of languages. Or Christ-like, and then Aaliyah means highly exalted. So I'm like, the best thing. And I'm like, I'm like, it's a beautiful name. And I don't think that they knew what they were actually doing. So shout out to me and shout out to Kier. And I do have a friend who calls me Kier. So I like that. I'm gonna call myself Dark now. I'm like, no one can ever tell me I'm not.
It's official. It's official. So Kirsten, can I thank you very much for joining us? Thanks for sticking with us through the bump at the beginning with Shafiq. Thanks, Shafiq. And anyone can have broadband problems, and it was just happenstance that I happened to be in the background and could log in. So I'm glad we were able to, because it was a fascinating talk. I hope I wasn't too ropey, because I was not prepared at all.
No, I truly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I was looking forward to speaking with Shafiq again. We had a great chat last week. I was looking forward to speaking with him, but kudos to you guys. High five for being able to transition so seamlessly, and both of you making me feel so welcomed and inviting me on the show. Really did enjoy my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Now, normally at the end, I would remind everyone of the next show that we have coming up. I think we're going to have a summer break right now, so I don't know the dates for that, but we are going to share all those on social media for the upcoming shows. I think will be either at the end of or just after August. So in the meantime, everyone who's watching, either live or in replay, have a fantastic summer. I can tell you it's way too hot here in Glasgow. I hope you're not dying with the heat. You're in DC, Kirsten?
Outside of DC, it is very warm, but it's a little cloudy today. So
okay. Well, I hope we have a temperate summer and everyone has a great time. And we'll see you back when we come back with the Working Lunch late August, early September. Thanks very much again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye everyone. Thank you very much for joining in.